Very capable sports sedan and a kick to drive. See your authorized dealer today for more about Catera, the caddy that zigs. Get your kicks with a zero down, $399 a month lease for 36 months, $849 due at signing.
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
High winds, rain, and hail battered the Northeast on this Labor Day, and the storms are being blamed for the deaths of at least 3 people. Hello, I'm Bob Stokes, and welcome to this edition of Weather Center.
And I'm Dan Atkinson. Fortunately, the weather has calmed, but it will take a while to clean up the mess and restore power to thousands of people. One of the fatalities was in the Bronx, where strong winds brought down this huge tree limb. 1 woman was killed and 2 other people were hurt. On Manhattan's Upper West Side, the heavy rain and winds took down a scaffolding, blew out a window, and sent bricks flying. The storms also raked Long Island, where crews were busy tonight clearing fallen trees and trying to restore power. At one point, more than 100,000 homes from Queens to Suffolk County were without power. And the storms stopped play at Shea Stadium between the Mets and Braves today. Winds picked up around 2:30 this afternoon, kicking up dirt and blowing debris all over the field. Ground crews scrambled to cover the infield, and they certainly earned their money today. Look at those guys. Stormy weather, and as the storms came through New York City about mid-afternoon, they really produced a lot of wind gusts, 70, 80 miles per hour, not uncommon, and in fact quite a cool down as well. Temperatures tumbled, as we'll see in just a moment. But you can see the widespread reports of severe weather. Wind and hail widespread across Pennsylvania, New York State, also portions of New England, getting back into Virginia, West Virginia, on into Ohio, Michigan, even south of Chicago. Right now, radar satellite composite is showing once again some heavy rain falling, but not severe weather. Heavy rain at LaGuardia. You're also getting some heavy rain back at Newark. Thunderstorms around the nation's capital. Much drier, as you can see, back across Pennsylvania and New York State, but you can't rule out the chance on into tomorrow for some more scattered showers and possibly a few isolated thunderstorms because you'll have cold air aloft. At this point, though, most of the thunderstorms are rumbling from eastern portions of Kentucky back across West Virginia into the Delmarva. Some of the heaviest weather right along the coastal areas where a special marine warning is in effect from Great Egg Inlet, New Jersey, down to Fenwick Island, Delaware, as strong to severe thunderstorms are pushing on toward the Atlantic and out of Delaware Bay. We take a closer view of radar, and you can see it is stormy around Richmond on up toward the nation's capital, and the precipitation is spreading on toward the east along and ahead of the cold front, which is the leading edge of the cooler, drier Canadian air. But it is rather chilly aloft, and that instability once again will continue on into tomorrow to produce some scattered showers across the northeast. Meanwhile, in the west, to the west of this stationary boundary, which is really where the cooler, heavier air has bumped up against the eastern slopes of the Rockies, to the west of that stationary front, we have still a lot of moisture, residual moisture left over from what was at one time Hurricane Isis, and you combine that with the lifting of an upper-level low-pressure area, and there are widespread showers and thunderstorms in the west. There's been some heavy rain at Mount Shasta, but some of the more frequent lightning strikes have been occurring over portions of Montana, fortunately beginning to diminish, as you can see. But also radar showing some of the precipitation mainly between Glasgow and Billings on up toward Havre, Montana, pushing on off toward the north and east. Well, there's some interesting weather developing perhaps in the Gulf of Mexico, and Bob has details.
Thanks a lot, Dan. I do. We've got a disturbance across the southwestern part of the Gulf of Mexico where pressures have been falling. And as we go forth in time, I'll focus on this in just a moment in terms of a close-up. But notice that front that Dan was talking about. It's going to be interesting over the next few days, and it'll bear watching with this front moving toward the south and this moisture streaming northward. That could equal some very heavy rains along the Gulf Coast. We'll be watching that carefully. But let's focus specifically right here in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico and the Bay of Cancun.
Tuesday morning, and thank you for joining us on the Weather Channel. It is 10 minutes before the hour. You've tuned in just in time for Storm Watch. The good news is that we have no storms to contend with this morning, certainly like this time yesterday morning with several severe weather watches in effect over the northeast. This morning we have a much more stable, a cooler air mass in place over the northeast, all because that frontal boundary moved through overnight. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Right now, though, let's get the latest, our tropical update. And you know, we've been talking about this large area of low pressure in the southern Gulf of Mexico. We're very concerned about this area because, you know, this is the same general area that Earl formed last week. Right now, it's very, very disorganized. We've seen no true low-level circulation in one general area. We've had indications that we have several areas of low pressure here in the southern Gulf of Mexico. The Air Force reservist reconnaissance aircraft will be flying into the area later this afternoon to get more details on this system to see if there is a broad low-level center of circulation if we can find with this area. But right now it's just a broad area of low pressure, and individual smaller areas of low pressure have been detected. Now we've noticed the flare-up of clouds, the deep convection here, one batch closer to the Mexican coast in the Bay of Campeche, and another batch of convection here closer to the coast of Louisiana. So you see there is a general broad area of convection, and until we get just one particular area concentrated of convection, that's when we'll really say that this system is becoming more organized. But right now we have two separate areas to focus on this morning. Now, it's very disorganized, but this could very well become our next tropical depression and maybe even tropical storm in the Atlantic Basin. If this does develop, its name will be Francis. You know, we've already had Alex. We could put a check by Alex, Bonnie, Charlie, Danielle, and Earl was our latest one. And then the next one will be Francis. And Francis very well could develop in the Gulf of Mexico over the next couple of days. So we will keep you posted. The difference between Francis, if Francis develops, and Earl, you know, of last week. Last week, Earl had a different upper air pattern associated with it, as we had very strong winds out of the west. And that's why Earl was basically just constantly being sheared, and it took quite a while to develop. But we don't have that upper air westerly wind flow with this system. So the forecast models indicate that if this system does develop and become more organized, it is more than likely that it will be focused more in the western Gulf of Mexico, closer to Texas and Louisiana, opposed to the panhandle of Florida where Earl came ashore last week. But we will keep you posted as we continue to watch the southern Gulf of Mexico. Other than that, it's pretty quiet across the Atlantic basin. We've had quiet conditions, tranquil over the Caribbean this morning. Here is a little wave approaching the Lesser Antilles. We'll focus on that in just a moment, but it's quiet again over the Caribbean. Here is that wave. As you see, some convection with it. It's very weak. We've had no true signs of low-level circulation here. It could bring some squally weather to the islands, but that's just about it. We're not too impressed with this particular system. We are impressed, however, with our next mega wave that seems to be coming off of the West African coast, and we'll continue to watch this very closely. The beginning of it all, of course, as these waves come off of the African coast. We have a long time to watch it, but the way it appears right now, we've had some large convection associated with it, and even reports of a little spin, as you can clearly see here on the satellite picture. We have some rotation with this system, so we'll keep you posted as it's well out to sea now, just coming off the African coast, so we have at least 4 or 5 days to watch this system. Now, from the far eastern Atlantic back to the Pacific, we have our 10th actually, tropical storm of the season in the eastern Pacific, Tropical Storm Javier, 195 miles south-southwest of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. This is Cabo San Lucas. It's located here, the southern Baja Peninsula. Winds of 45 miles an hour. It's moving west-northwest at 5. The lowest estimated pressure, 997 millibars. Javier is expected to strengthen a little bit over the next 24 to 48 hours as it moves off into cooler waters. And we are kind of concerned that with our trough of low pressure here in the Pacific Northwest, that it could perhaps turn Javier a little bit more to the east. But the official forecast track right now takes Javier out over open waters in the Pacific, and it'll be a little cooler, of course, the waters here. So after strengthening,
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. You're tuned in just in time for Storm Watch. We'll give you an idea of where there's a possibility of severe weather later this afternoon, coming up in just a couple of minutes. But first, a full tropical briefing for you with John Hope, the Weather Channel's hurricane expert. John?
Thank you, Marshall, and good morning, everybody. Well, in the Gulf of Mexico is where our focus is. But first of all, I wanted to show you here on this visible satellite picture, we can see dust. If you look at it carefully, you can see that's a lighter shade. What that is dust that came all the way over from the Sahara Desert in Africa. And right on the leading edge of that, as is often the case, we have a tropical wave that is bringing some showers into the islands. But let's get back here to the Gulf where our real focus is going to be. We have some disturbed weather in the Gulf. Don't have too many pictures in here. And it is very complicated structure yet. What we don't have is any well-developed circulation center. And we can go ahead and show you that on another picture here, if we can just get that up. Here we are, looking into the Gulf. This is a combination radar here and satellite picture. And we can see right down in here, we have perhaps the beginning of a circulation there. We're not really quite sure. And we know that we have a little bit of a vortex or low center over here right on the coast of Texas between Corpus Christi and Brownsville. They've been getting some pretty good showers come into Corpus Christi over the last several hours, but right now it's not as low a pressure there as it is farther out. Now the Hurricane Center is going to send a reconnaissance aircraft out here this afternoon to check this out, and they're going to investigate this area too, because if we have something developing that far out, that's going to be of a little bit more interest. And the reason I say that is that this one on the coast here, we know that since that's over land and partially over land, it's not going to develop any further. Now I wonder if we get back to the satellite picture here, and perhaps, yes, here's the area where the airplane is going to check out. Now, if the center is out here, this would give a chance for this to have a better likelihood of development. In any case, what we are afraid is going to happen here, that we're going to have a prolonged period of pretty unsettled weather in the Gulf of Mexico, because we don't expect it to move very fast, for one thing. So there is a possibility of getting a depression or storm development out there, and we're going to be watching with a great deal of interest to see what the aircraft can tell us this afternoon. But one thing we're fairly confident of, it's not going to develop in a hurry, and it's not going to be moving very rapidly either, so we have plenty of time to watch. In the rest of the Caribbean Sea and the Western Caribbean, it's very nice weather for the most part. A few showers have flared up down there to the north of Panama. And looking out over the ocean, we can see that dust again. And there's that tropical wave. That is going to bring showers from, say, Martinique and Guadeloupe on down to Trinidad and Tobago. But it doesn't look as if we're getting any kind of organization there at all. Now, off the coast of Africa, we had a large mass of thunderstorms come off the coast yesterday. And now these thunderstorms have died down quite a bit. But we can see a little character here to this circulation, a kind of a counterclockwise circulation. So that is something we'll watch as it moves on across. This is a time of year, maybe drawing to an end, though over in that section of the ocean. We're not likely to see much come out of there, say, after a week or 10 days from today. Now, in the Pacific side, off the coast of Mexico, we have a tropical storm here, Javier. The winds are up to 50 miles an hour. It's moving toward the west-northwest at 4. And we're a little concerned out here because this isn't moving very rapidly at all. And it looks like it might skirt kind of close and not move fast to the coast of Baja California. So that's something that we'll be watching as time goes by. In the meantime, on this satellite picture, we can see that it is getting better organized, and we expect it to continue to do that for the next couple of days. Well, Marshall has a severe weather outlook here in the States to talk to us about, so we'll turn it back to him.
Thanks, John. We've got some showers and thunderstorms along a cold front in the eastern